Hey, happy Friday everyone. How's it going? Nick Bell here, your Line 6 product specialist for the next half hour. How's everyone doing today? Thank you so much for joining. So, what I have here today and what we're going to talk about is the beautiful, trusty Line 6 Powercab. Today I'm using the Powercab Plus, but we also have just the Powercab 112 and then also the Powercab 212 Plus. So if you're looking for even more volume and combining two different kinds of speakers and such, then the 212 is for you. So even though we're talking about Powercab today, really any questions you have on any Line 6 products, Helix, Powercab, Podgo, whatever it may be, hit us up and we'll do our best. This is just kind of like a placeholder to talk about today, and I don't think I've talked about Powercab really, I don't think I've even really had Powercab as a subject for our live stream. So I thought it would be cool to, kind of brush the dust off of my Powercab here and, talk about it a bit with you guys. So for those of us who are unaware what Powercab is Powercab is a beautiful, a beautiful way to amplify your sound. Whether you're a Line 6 user or you're using something else, Powercab is really for anyone using modeling at all. So we're using the Powercab Plus today. The Powercab, the construction of the Powercab is a poplar plywood. So when you think about using other sources of audio for your modeler, lots of people use so many different kinds of speakers and such, and many of those speakers are made out of plastic. And so when you think about having amazing amp modeling and cab modeling and stuff, and then you throw it through a plastic speaker, you're going to lose a little bit of that tone there. So keep that in mind whenever you're choosing your audio source. But so pretty much we're using Powercab, so it's made out of the same construction as a traditional guitar cabinet. And before we get into the whole DSP side of things, let's take a look at the back of Powercab Plus. And so what's great about Powercab Plus, you notice here on the top right you have two inputs, input 1, input 2. So input 1 is where you would plug your modeler into. And so if we want to use any of the speaker models that are built in, that's where that will process. But input 2 is for if you're doing, any kind of live performances, you could use Powercab as your own personal monitor. So I could literally send in a stage mix into my input 2 right here, and you have your own monitor send. So however you want to do that live, Powercab is ready. Then you'll notice the red XLR input and outputs. This is for Line 6 link, or for more of you audio guys out there, or lighting guys, AES EBU. So what I can do is I could actually connect multiple Powercabs together. And so if I want, one left, one right, or two left, two right, I could just use an AES EBU digital cable, and they'll all sync up with each other. I could even plug my Helix with a, via Line 6 link here, and then I could even control how Powercab responds from my Helix. And so we call that Powercab remote. So I could change everything I'm going to be showing you here on my screen. If you have a Helix, you could, essentially do all of this from your Helix device. So what I'm going to do now is going to go on over to my screen here. John, hello from West Virginia. Thank you for joining today, John. Much appreciated. Love having you guys join us today. So what I have going on today, guys, is I have my Helix rack, and the amp I'm using right now is a Mandarin 80. I'm going into this like little dual cab setup here. Now, granted, the whole idea with Powercab is how it sounds in the room, right? And so I don't have a really, awesome mic setup. So what I have here is my little Yeti room mic, and I have that kind of pointed towards the Powercab here. So my apologies if the tone isn't amazing, because this really isn't, my go-to when it comes to, recording an amp, right? But hey, we'll make do with what we got. So with that being said, I'm just going to give a little bit of a, little A chord here. Let me know how this sounds. Again, keep into account room mic, and we're streaming here on Facebook and YouTube, so it may not sound the best. So. And so that's the room sound. Hopefully it's, hopefully it gets the point across on what we're doing here. So I have my Helix, just so you can see the tone stack that I got going on right now. I got that pillars. Maybe I'll turn that off, clean it up a bit. So now we got a nice little, cleaner tone happening. But this other application I have right here is Powercab Edit. So with Powercab Plus, everything I'm doing here in Powercab Edit, I could do directly on the Powercab itself. So keep that in mind, but instead of having an overhead cam and the ease of use of this application, we'll just be using this today. So what's really cool about Powercab is you have 3 different ways of running it. And so the way I'm running it right now is flat mode. And so the voicing is FRFR, so full range flat response. So that means whatever I have going on in my tone or in my, my modeler here, it's going to shine through the Powercab just like a, full range speaker would. So your studio monitors or a PA speaker, that's how it's going to react. But you have some control over the DSP here with the voicing. And so right now we're in FRFR, but I could do, low frequency raw or, LF flat as well. And so that will change, the overall EQing and, essentially the crossover between the horn and the speaker that's inside of the Powercab. And again, that speaker, it's a, 12-inch speaker that, we sourced to ensure that we can do the speaker modeling, the speaker modeling thing that I'm going to be talking about in a second. So right now it's FRFR. So FRFR is how you would want to run it when you're using, essentially what I have here. I have cabinet modeling happening. I have some reverb that's really tucked down. I could crank that up a little bit and we could hear that reverb. So whatever you need in your tone to shine through, we could just, turn on the flat mode, and we're in FRFR. Now, I could change those crossovers by going to LFRaw. So here's full range flat response. Here's LFRaw. And then finally, LF flat. I really like that flat voicing. But as you can see, you have a lot of control over your sound when it comes to running it in flat mode. And so maybe if you have a tone and it's just maybe a little harsh, having the full range, we can go here and choose one of these different voicings. Let's see what we have here. So Jim, great question. Will other modelers that are not Line 6 brand also sound good with the Powercab? Yes, and that's the beauty about Powercab, is that just because it's a Line 6 Powercab doesn't mean it's proprietary to any Line 6 products. And another reason here, when we look at this user IR, and so I could have all these impulses put into the Powercab, so you can have 128 impulses or 118. So the whole idea here is that if you're a user of anyone else outside of Line 6, you can have Powercab hold on to all of your IRs and essentially, again, use it with any modeler. Just plug into the back via XLR. And so that's why when we look at the back here, just because we have Line 6 link doesn't mean, hey, you have to plug in a Helix or something. That Line 6 link right here could just be to plug in multiple Powercab units. Or if you just have your one Powercab, just, hey, plug your modeler into input 1. It doesn't matter what you're using. So that's why I was saying earlier, if you are a user of modeling, you are a Powercab customer, because you could definitely, throw anything into this. And that's why we have all these, IR slots, because if you think about it, with Helix, you could have all of your impulse responses in Helix. So why would you, need an IR bank in your Powercab? Well, that's why, because maybe you are a user of other modeling. So great question, Jim. Thank you for asking. And so that was a great segue. We went from flat, and now we went over to user IR. So when we look at our presets here, you'll notice that we have all these different names, and then we get into impulse responses. And so the third mode, and what makes Powercab special and unique compared to everything else that's on the market, is that although Powercab offers a way to amplify your modeler, what Powercab also offers is speaker modes. And so if you think about it, imagine being able to open up this cabinet and change the speaker out with any speaker you wanted. That's essentially what Powercab is. And so what we have here is we have vintage, green, and cream. And so if you think about it, vintage is based off of a vintage 30. Green is the classic greenback speaker, Celestion greenback. Cream being the Celestion, G12M 65. So we have all these different speakers that you can choose from. Brown, if you guessed it, brown is based off the Celestion G12 EVH. And again, just based on, I'm not saying that this is an EVH speaker, just saying that's what it's based off of. And so what I thought would be cool is kind of run through these different speaker modes and let you hear as best as I can, with this mic, how they sound. Because when you listen to a modeler and, looking at this tone I have set up here, you're listening to your tone through, the ears of a microphone. So I'm essentially choosing a cabinet, choosing the mic I want. And so what you're getting is this kind of like, my amp is in the studio kind of setup, and you're sitting in the sound room hearing how it sounds, running through your mics and stuff like that. With Powercab speaker modes, the whole idea here is it takes that equation out of it, where I'm sure we all can agree, when you sit in the room with your amp, it's a much different sound compared to when you're, using modeling and you hear your, at least your cabinet models through the eyes of a microphone. And so that's what Powercab does, is it, introduces that amp in the room feel that that some of us may be missing, when we're doing this whole modeling thing. And so that's the whole idea here. So before I get a little further, I'm seeing some stuff coming in the chat here. Let's see what's going on. Do you recommend sending line out mode from your modeler output and set the mode to line in on the Powercab to achieve maximum stage volume? Sending line out mode from your modeler output and set... Yes, so let me see here. Do you recommend sending line out mode from your modeler output and set the mode to line in on the Powercab to achieve maximum stage volume? Yes. Because, essentially that's all you need to send out is, line out mode, line out level. And, what I recommend is, essentially what I do is, in a live setting is I will turn my Powercab's volume up all the way, to maximum. And then I'll go to my Helix and control how much volume I want coming out of the Helix. And so the Powercab is always pushing, always ready, so to speak. But no, that's, very, great practice there. So some YouTubers say FR powered can sound better if you can switch the tweeter off. Is that true? It's really to each their own, and it all depends, I would say, what you have going, what you're working with in your tone. Cap sound better if you can switch the tweeter off. Is that true? It depends what you're doing and, what what you are looking for, coming out of your, speaker source. Because, if you have a lot of high frequency stuff going on, because when you think about a guitar cab, there's no tweeter in there, there's no horn. You essentially just have those speakers, and so it all depends on that sparkle that you're looking for. And if you're using anything from certain filters or certain reverbs, if you really want those to shine through, the horn can help. But that's why in this flat mode here, messing around with this LFRaw and flat essentially is eliminating that tweeter out of the equation. And so that's the thing that makes Powercab special compared to really, plugging into any other full range speakers. Because with most full range speakers, you don't have that ability to just turn the horn off. You may have different EQs and such, depending on the manufacturer. But when it comes to a speaker made for someone using modeling, a lot of them, especially, some newcomers, don't offer that. If anything, they give you an EQ stack, and that's it. So yeah, if you want to turn off the tweeter in flat mode, that's where you're going to go into these different voicings right here, and essentially just eliminate the horn out of the mix. And so that's why I was saying earlier, the crossover changes, so it's not really sending much of anything, especially in LF flat, it's not really sending much of anything to the horn. Let's see here. So let's see here. Good question. I have a Podgo. I'm about to get the Catalyst 100 this week. How do you recommend hooking this up optimally? So, it really depends on how you're using your Podgo. If you're essentially just looking to run your full tone from Podgo into your Catalyst, what I would recommend doing is, if you look in the back of Catalyst, the effects loop has two modes. It has the standard effects loop, and then it has power amp in. When you switch that mode switch to power amp in, essentially what's happening is it sends the return input directly to the power amp of Catalyst. So you could essentially disable cabinet modeling in your Podgo and run everything into Catalyst and use Catalyst as your cab source, and you'll get a really great sound. You could even turn leave the cabinet modeling on and see how that works out for you as well. But that would be the most optimal way to run your Podgo into Catalyst, as opposed to just plugging it into the guitar into the amp input. Because as soon as you plug your Podgo or any other modeler into the input of any amp, and speaking of Catalyst, it's going to run essentially your modeler through the preamp of Catalyst, which is those amp designs, those 6 original amp designs. So that would be the most optimal way to run it. Otherwise, if you're looking to just use effects, you could always connect Podgo through the effects loop, hit the mode switch over to effects loop mode, and and essentially just have your reverbs and delays go through go through the effects loop, or you could just plug it into the front and have different distortions and modulations and such like that. It all depends on how you want to use that Podgo with your Catalyst. But great question there. So if I turn volume up max limit, would it? So Joel, if I turn the volume up at max limit, would it affect the tone? So the thing with Powercab, when you think of amps and such like that, you've always heard like getting speaker breakup. If I crank this amp up really loud, I'm going to get this speaker breakup in this additional tone, let's say, if you will. At the end of the day, when you're plugging your modeler into Powercab, no matter how loud either or are, it's not going to improve your tone. It's not going to make something that's not already there. If anything, it's just going to be louder. I have read where some feel that their Powercab sounds the best when they're pushing their modeler, where they're where you look at the reading on the on the input of Powercab, it'll start to turn yellow. Because it's being pushed really hard. I've heard that some feel that it just sounds better right there. Me personally, it doesn't sound any different, but some feel that it sounds better. And, the beauty of sound is in the eye of the beholder, let's say. So if it sounds better to you, then I would run it that way. But I don't hear a difference. There's really, you're not going to get any speaker breakup out of this thing and get an additional, get an additional tone factor out of it, if you will. So no, if you're sending line level to it, your tone is going to be however your tone is in your modeler. If you just crank it up, it's just going to be louder. But again, everyone hears something a little different. Joel, again, what is the difference between FRFR, LF flat, and LFRaw? So with full range flat response, you have it is in this mode, in this voicing, your Powercab is reacting like a traditional full range, speaker. So you could compare it to a studio monitor. You can compare this to, a PA speaker, let's say. Now, when you go into LFRaw and LF flat, what's happening here is these are two different voicings where the crossover and EQ is changing between the speaker and the horn. So when you go to LFRaw and LF flat, you're essentially, especially to LF flat, you're essentially removing the horn out of the mix. LFRaw, it's a little bit of a different crossover where it's not completely removed out of the mix, but, it's turned down a lot lower. So that's why if we go into full range flat response, and here, let me turn on an overdrive here, and then that'll kind of give us a lot of more high end on our tone. So this is full range flat response. Now if we go to LFRaw, that crossover is going to change. And then if we go down to LF flat, so that's essentially what's happening there with the voicings and the differences that you're going to get. And, there are some times where, the full range flat response sounds great. And then maybe if you're getting just a little bit, too much sparkle on your high end, you can, go down to LFRaw and that kind of fixes it. And then you can change, the EQing of your amp, so to speak. But what's great about it is, you have that control, you're not stuck with it. And so let's see here. Great questions, guys. I love it. Love the community that we have here and everyone chiming in. So, any news on firmware updates for the Powercab? Even if I did know or not know, I couldn't say. But as you know, with us at Line 6, we are always working and always innovating and always supporting our products. So there may be something in the pipeline. I'm not sure. But even if I did know of something, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But good stuff. So let's see here, another great question. I guess that using the IRs in the Powercab instead of the Helix decreases the DSP used by Helix. Of course. Granted, IRs don't use a whole lot of DSP to begin with, but that is one way where you can shave off a little DSP usage with your Helix when doing so. And also for those non-Helix users, if they don't have a way of using IRs with their modeler, this is a way where they can. And if you think about Powercab, I can actually send a direct line via USB and use it as a recording interface. So if you're someone who's looking to record, you have a model, you have some sort of modeling, but no way of using IRs, this is a segue to be able to do that. And if you don't have a recording interface, Powercab can be your recording interface, and it could also be your playback system as well. So Powercab can wear many different hats depending on what what you need it to do. Let's see. So inputs use. So Zach, glad you asked. Let's take a look at the back side. So when we take a look at Powercab Plus, now Powercab 112 has about half of what we have in the back here. Powercab 112 also does not store any any IRs. You essentially just get the full range, flat response, the flat setting, and 6 different speaker models. But this is the back panel of Powercab 112 Plus. Input 1 is for your modelers, so any of the voicings we've been looking at, that's where that processing is going to happen. On the left of that, input 2, that's where you could send a monitor feed. So if you want your own personal monitor mix on whatever stage you're on, that's what you would use input 2 for. And then we have below that the line 6 links, so you can use these to connect 2 or more power cabs together. They will automatically know what is left and what is right. And then we have our output as well. So with our output, what's really cool here is that if I'm using, let's say, a speaker mode, or really any mode, it doesn't matter. You could send a balanced signal to your front of house, but when we use these speaker modes, as I was saying earlier, the whole idea here is to have a amp in the room kind of a feel, and an amp in the room sound. Now, if you want to send a direct line to the front of house, well, you could either mic it up traditionally, or if you want to do it digitally, we have our simulated microphones here. So although I'm using a speaker model, I could choose a DI mic if I just want to send that balanced signal to front of house. And so that's what we have in the back panel of our power cab. There's the USB I was telling you about, MIDI as well. So, if you want to change speaker models or go from flat mode or, any other voicings, and you don't have a Helix modeler, you could do that over MIDI as well. And then of course we have our ground lift and our low cut, if you don't want to dive into the digital side of things. So great questions, guys, much appreciated. Ben, I see you there. Side question, any firmware updates for the Varx? These 3 sound incredible together. What else could be modified now with the Varx HD software to make it even better? That's a great question. I don't have any answers, for any firmware updates, especially for Varx. But we'll see what happens. You never know what the future holds. So pretty much everything that's out there online and stuff right now is, really all that we have. Let's see. So does line 6 consider making a stereo power cab in one cabinet? That's a great question. Not sure if again, you know how it is. We can't talk about anything that's in development, but that is a great recommendation. Did line 6 ever consider making a stereo power cab in one cabinet? So although there is the Powercab 212, it is not, of course, it is not a stereo cab. You can mix and match 2 different speaker models in one sitting, but of course it's not a stereo cab. We did do something kind of like that. It was called the the Firehawk 1500. I don't know if anyone here remembers that, but this was a couple years after the release of Amplify. So we're going back, many years. And that amp was a true stereo amp, and it had a lot of the same technology that we have here in Powercab. And for those of you who want to go back even further, the stage source. So it was just a huge stereo amplifier. The only thing about it is that it weighed as much as a car. And so I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Firehawk 1500, but that is a all-wood cab. Same idea as Powercab, and it is stereo. But I don't think, we don't make it anymore because I don't think it did too well. It was just a behemoth of an amplifier. It was amazing and sounded amazing and, made sense on paper. But I think the reality of it was just too darn heavy. But if you see one of those at a local store, or someone's trying to, get rid of it, that's your stereo power cab, essentially, is that Firehawk 1500, and unfortunately we don't make it anymore. So let's see here. Did line 6 consider? Yep. Will the Helix line get a flux effect? Okay, so yeah, so we're talking about a HX1 here. The thing is, so yeah, with flux, you're able to control, the ramp from minimum to maximum parameters. And what's really cool is the timing. You could go from milliseconds or note subdivision all the way down to 4 beats or 6 beats in a song, right? So there are ways to kind of get close with Helix, but having just a flux control would be great. So maybe that's something we could put in the idea scale, and as you know, that could always be a simple firmware update in the future. So great observation, and I never really thought about having flux with Helix. And for those of us who maybe are hearing this for the first time, take a look at HX1 and in the flux control that it has. Because the whole idea is you could essentially, it's like having a expression pedal, without having an expression pedal, and the timing that you can set for ramp parameters to ramp up and down is just amazing. So good stuff. Maybe we'll see that in Helix. Not sure yet. Taking a look here from Zach, does the USB jack allow audio input? Yes, it does. So taking a look at the USB here, I could use this, if you think about it, it's it's essentially an interface, an in and out. So I could use this USB to send audio to, let's say, my DAW, and I could record, and then I could send that audio back through the USB and use Powercab as my audio source. So yes, you can send audio from your computer via USB through Powercab, and you will hear it coming out of your Powercab. And so earlier, before today's stream, I, did a couple line tests and recorded with my software here. And when I pressed play, it came out of my studio monitors and my Powercab. So yes, you can. So taking a look here. So I think that's pretty much it, guys. We're at a half an hour after the hour. That's all the time I have today. We kind of really dove into everything Powercab, so hopefully that kind of lifted the veil with any questions you guys had, and you all had amazing questions today, so thank you so much. Wasn't a whole lot of playing today. I guess it was just more of a formal, informal kind of a stream today. So does the USB jack allow MIDI? So MIDI over USB. I am not 100%. So MIDI over USB with Powercab. Let's take a look here. Let's see what we got. Usually all of our stuff has MIDI over USB, but let's see here. This may be, let me double check here for you, Zach. I'm not sure if it does, but let's see here. So, yes. So with the Powercab, you can do MIDI over USB. So great question, good stuff. Much appreciated, guys. Thank you for joining today. Before I let you go, keep in mind, if you go to line6.com/events, you can get paired with myself or another Line 6 product specialist. So if you liked what we were doing today and would like a one-on-one experience and have a free 30 to 45 minutes to talk about anything you'd like in regards to a Line 6 product, hit us up at line6.com/events. Other than that, happy Friday, everyone. Have a great and safe weekend. Happy New Year, and until next time, we will see you on the next stream. Thank you so much.